I'm James Rosenthal,
And I'm John Hess.
and today we will be pitching our ideal versions of The Matrix. Alright, so this is going to be a new concept that we are doing called Do It Better. The general idea for this is that John and I, in an idealized world, a movie studio has come to each of us and said that they are going to give us full reign to redo The Matrix however we want to, and they will give us up to 3 films to do it. We don't have to utilize that formula, but we have full reign over who's directing it, writing it, acting in it, and they want a general idea of where our stories are going to go. Between John and I, we may be a little bit more detailed. I don't know. We have not discussed this. John and I also do not know, before we reveal this on the podcast, who we have cast in these roles or whatever. We've done that on purpose. I think there'll be some fun little surprises for each other in this. John will go ahead and do his pitch first, and I will pick his brains if I have any questions on certain things, and then it'll be my turn, and John can kind of pick my brains, and we will kind of end it on that note and kind of see where we end up. I think it'll be fun to see what surprises are in store. So, that being said, John, what is your pitch for a redo of The Matrix?
I have a feeling that I'm gonna be picking your brain a lot more than you're gonna be picking mine. The Matrix, to me, in general, is just a great. The original Matrix is just a great film. I actually saw The Matrix, and the first time I saw it, I actually didn't like it that much because I don't know if I was in the right frame of mind when I watched it, but it's one of those movies, and I actually really like this fact. It's one of those movies that doesn't spoon feed you material. It doesn't tell you everything. It wants you to get there on your own. And I think because I didn't understand some things, it made me not like it that much. But in subsequent viewings, it became one of my favorite movies because there's a lot in it that isn't explained, and you don't really understand it until like maybe towards the end of the movie, and then in subsequent viewings, it's like, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense. Just when Switch or whatever her name is refers to Neo as a copper top, and you're like, what the heck is that? But you find out at the end, it's because he's literally a battery. So as far as my actual pitch, it would probably stay roughly the same. I really, really like the story. I love the story. It's really intriguing. It's a different take on a post-apocalyptic world, and kind of mind control and stuff like that. I, however, would stop at The Matrix.
The first film.
That's it. I would
so
just
you would do
stop because it was and I always was curious, and I didn't really do a whole lot of research on whether or not the Wachowskis had planned to do a 2 and a 3, but I think it's just such a great standalone movie, and the ending in itself leaves it open to kind of whatever you could think. And then I just think the execution of 2 and 3, or Reloaded and Revolutions, it delves too much into the technicality of it, and so whereas the first one, the reason I didn't like it initially was because of a lot of the technical stuff, but then you can wrap your brain around it in subsequent viewings, whereas in Revolution or Reloaded and Revolutions, it just got too into its own head, and it just was ridiculous. I think I would leave it at the initial movie, and that would really be it. I mean, I'm sure there's definitely some things that I would add to and change. If I was going to have an ideal cast for that time frame, this came out in 99, so if I was to have an ideal cast for that time frame, I was trying to think of who I would see in that role. I mean, because you've seen the movie, it's hard to think of anybody else in those roles, but I racked my brain a little bit, and I was trying to think, okay, who at the time was at the caliber of a Keanu Reeves, not that he's the most amazing actor, but he was definitely after watching this movie, it's he's definitely perfect for that role.
Right.
But I was thinking, and I was like, okay, what if we threw a Brad Pitt or an Ed Norton into that role?
Wow.
And then I was thinking, Fight Club, because that came out that same year, 99.
I hear you.
That was a banner year for movies. But I was like, yeah, an Ed Norton in that role would be really, really weird and interesting. I don't know if it would be good. It'd be like an Eric Stoltz in the
Yeah.
Back to the Future, Marty McFly role or something. But it would be different. And of course, then with Morpheus, I went completely cliche and just said like a Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh my gosh.
Which is basically, I mean, kind of him and Lawrence Fishburne getting mixed up
They
for
do.
that role anyway. But then I was like, okay, or you could do like, you could go a different way and do like a Gary Oldman or something like that.
Oh yeah, I could
That'd be
definitely
kind
see him in that kind of role.
interesting. And as far as like a Trinity, I was also trying to kind of put my headspace back into that time frame. So I was like thinking, well, if you wanted to go really stylized or something, like you might go with like a Charlize Theron or something like that.
Okay.
And then I was thinking, well, if you wanted to kind of go a little bit similar with the role how it is now, you could do like Rachel Weisz or Vice.
Oh, okay. I think it's Weiss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, but I know what you're talking about.
And then Agent Smith. Honestly, like Hugo Weaving was perfect in that role.
He was really good.
It was really hard to think of somebody else, but I was like, okay, if you had like a skinnier, more in shape Philip Seymour Hoffman,
At the time, yeah.
maybe that might work. And then to direct, I was trying to think. I don't really know what he was up to back then. But I was thinking like maybe like a Nolan,
Okay.
possibly, just because it's like a darker movie, and
Yeah.
and it'd be kind of interesting to see what he would do with that. I also thought of like a Fincher, or like even like a Tarantino. Tarantino would be a really odd pick for that. I don't know if it would be good, but it would be different.
It would be different. That would be a word
much
for
different.
it. Holy crap.
But then, so like, okay, that's an ideal cast for like back in that time frame. So like a 99. I'm sure you wouldn't be able to get Pitt or Norton because they were both busy with Fight Club. But
Right.
if it was ideal, like that's what I would go for. Now, if I were to cast it today in the role of Neo, Tom Hardy.
Interesting.
Just because like he's like the it dude right now.
Yeah.
So it would make sense if it's a big studio film, they want to get like the it guy.
Huh.
It's like, would he be fitting in that role? Maybe. I don't know. Keanu didn't really say a whole hell of a lot in the Matrix movies.
He really didn't.
Tom Hardy doesn't really talk a whole lot.
He really didn't.
And then either Tom Hardy or you could go with like a Tama Wiseau from The Room. Oh, I'm the one.
Oh, hi, Trinity.
Oh, hi, Trinity. No, obviously not. But Morpheus, I think Idris Elba would be perfect.
Ooh.
So I thought, okay, if you
I
want
like
to go,
that.
yeah, right. He's like, possibly similar in age, but he's not like necessarily the older
I could buy that.
fella. But Trinity, I was thinking like either an Emily Blunt, or if you wanted to go a little bit more cliche, like a Jennifer Lawrence, maybe. I mean, she's a big actress.
Yeah,
so
yeah, I could see that.
I have a feeling that
Yeah.
it might be a little competition, because that's kind of what I liked about the original Matrix, is like you've got Keanu and you've got like Lawrence Fishburne, and they're kind of like the two big heavy hitters, whereas everybody else is kind of like not as well known. Maybe Hugo Weaving, but like there wasn't a whole lot of competition in like main roles or whatever. Not that like the focus wasn't just on Keanu, but I have a feeling if it was like Tom Hardy and Jennifer Lawrence, there would be like competition between the two to like steal scenes and whatnot. But,
True enough.
and Agent Smith, Hugo Weaving, man. I would just leave it at Hugo Weaving. He's just so good. And then same thing, director. I would do like a Nolan or like a Fincher or something like that.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I was kind of looking at their time frames of what they were doing at the time and what they're doing now, and it's like I think their style would be like the same either way.
Yeah, so now, John, I know the big thing in Hollywood these days is to do a shot-for-shot remake.
Oh, God.
And don't put any original content in. Is that your
Lion King?
Yeah, we went to go see that last week.
It's literally the same movie.
It's the same movie.
You like it because you remember seeing the animated version.
Yeah.
You just saw the animated
So
version.
it's fresh. It's fresh on my mind
great
because
CGI.
Yeah, we saw that last week and it was just not good. If you've seen the cartoon, there's no reason to see it. With that being said, John, is your movie going to be a shot-for-shot remake of The Matrix with nothing new? Because it's so beautiful and perfect, and you just love it.
Other than the fact that I would just dump Reloaded and Revolutions.
Yeah, like, is there anything that you would want to, I don't know, make your own? Like, or is this, are you happy with The Matrix as it is if you just wanted to do a one shot? Because that's perfectly fine too.
I mean, if I was going from the ground up, like if this movie wasn't made yet, obviously if it was already made, I would not do a shot-for-shot remake of it.
Right.
Now, like that would be. I mean, although that's probably coming at some point.
Oh yeah, I know.
Wait
There's
like 5
talks.
years down the road. I'm
There's
sure it'll be
talks.
remade.
There's talks of either sequels or spin-offs or possible remakes of The Matrix already going on right now in Hollywood.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, there's like there's so much stuff that I liked about it, and there's stuff that I, initially didn't like, but then in rewatching it, it's like it kind of grew on me. I like movies that don't spoon feed you material, even though initially it kind of made me like not like it a little bit. Like when I went back and watched it, it's like it just made it that much better. Little things that you don't pick up on until the second viewing. And there are a lot of movies like that. Some are worthwhile to watch again, and some are totally not worthwhile to watch again.
So you'd keep pretty much everything as it was, like in a nutshell. Like you're happy with it.
Other than like some of the casting, like
Yeah,
never really liked the character of Trinity.
Yeah.
I didn't really like how she was portrayed. It wasn't like my favorite character.
Right.
So I would definitely change up the casting with that. I mean, I would change up the casting in general. But if I had to make the movie again, I probably would keep Keanu in as the one.
Yeah.
Just cause, man, he did such a great job that it's hard to see anybody else. But I would mess around with the casting a little bit.
Do you have any idea who you would cast in the Oracle role?
I was just thinking about that a little bit before we started.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the
Preferably
spot.
somebody that wouldn't die halfway through filming.
Oh, yeah, that helps.
But maybe like oh geez, what would be really interesting or weird is if you got in like a really heavy hitter like a Meryl Streep.
Wow.
Just throw her in the movie for like 5 minutes. Like, what am I doing here? What is this movie? I've won Oscars.
And I'm in this weird remake of The Matrix. Oh man, I'm having scenes with Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy and Meryl Streep
Together at last.
She might do it, man. You never know.
Hey,
She's
you know
getting
what?
Up there.
Hey, it's
Throw
a
enough
paycheck.
money at her. Say this is Oscar material.
Yep.
Totally.
Oh, absolutely.
Not the Oscar you're thinking of, but
well,
like Oscar the Grouch. I don't know. Sesame reference.
Oscar bait film. No. Okay. All right.
So I told you mine was going to be a little cliche, and I really honestly pretty sure I'm gonna have a lot more brain picking on your end, because we talked a little tiny bit about this the other night, and I'm very curious where you're going to go with this, James, because I think you put a hell of a lot more thought into it than I did. So we'll see. I don't want to pump it up too much.
Oh, well, we'll see, I guess. Are you throwing it back to me now?
I'm throwing it back to you,
it's
man.
my turn. All right, so where do I start? My opinion of the Matrix trilogy is similar to yours. I loved the first one. The second and third one, I think, got so far up its own anus about its like mythological importance.
I would 100% agree
and
with that.
It combined with the fact that it just spazzed out on special effects scenes and in lieu of story, and you put those two things together, and I think that Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions are just pieces of garbage. I really honestly and I went into those movies wanting to love them, so I was it was disappointing.
Well, I would agree with the original Matrix. Like I loved the special effects in that, because they reinvented them in certain aspects with the whole bullet time camera and stuff. But then but that added to a really good story.
Yes.
Whereas then with 2 and 3, I think 2 especially, just like with the whole freeway scene and stuff like that, it was literally just, hey, we can do this stuff now, let's do it to the nth degree. And cut out story that actually makes sense, or go too much with the story in these convoluted ways. Right.
Yeah. It's in ways that are just dumb. It's trying to be smart, but it's almost pseudo smart, where the first film was actually a smart film. It's the second and third are throwing fancy terminology and crap in you and philosophy in your face,
vis-a-vis.
Yeah, and to sound like it's really smart, but it's not. It's dumb. They're just bad movies, unfortunately. And so that's kind of where I come from when I do this. And not only that, but I come from, whether you're talking about the first Matrix or the sequels, one of the major components that sold these movies was the special effects. at the time. It's like, wow, look at these revolutionary special effects. So when I looked at, if I'm going to remake a movie where this trilogy already exists, I can't sell my movie on amazing special effects. I can't do it because, well, guess what? We're not reinventing the wheel here. So what do I have? I have to do story, and I have to do it way better than the original Matrix did. And then what else did the Matrix do? It got so far up its own ass in mythology that it forfeited story. Well, I can't go that route. So my Matrix is going to be different, and it's going to be directed and casted in that way. So when I say all of these things, this is where I'm going. It's still going to be action oriented. It has to be.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it in a different flavor. So that's my preface for what I'm about to say.
Prepare yourself.
Prepare yourself, internet. So I'm going to start with my director. I'm going to go to my writer, and then I'm going to go to my cast.
Okay.
And we do have one similarity in a cast, but I put this person in a very different role.
Okay.
So this is going to be very interesting. And our director. So I'm starting with director. We agree on Christopher Nolan being a great director for this.
Okay.
Unlike you, I am doing a trilogy. I'm aiming to make this a trilogy. I think there is enough that you could do with this Matrix universe to get 3 films out of this and tell somewhat of a compelling story. My screenwriter, I'm going with Christopher McQuarrie as my screenwriter for this. He has done some of the more recent Mission Impossible movies. He wrote the script for The Usual Suspects.
Okay.
So that's some of his repertoire as far as where he's gone. He's proven that he can write smart action films, and he also has proven that he can write compelling characters. So that's why I chose him as a screenwriter. And then I think from a visual style, Nolan can rein it in enough where it's not going to be this spaz fest of special effects, and he can concentrate on story. So that's why I'm choosing the people that I'm choosing from the top.
Well, and he generally does. He likes a mix of like practical effects,
Right.
with CGI and whatnot.
Right.
So I think that would be good because I think that's what a lot of the first Matrix was a lot of practical effects.
Right.
Using all these different cameras and things, and then obviously CGI and whatnot. But it was a really good mix of the two.
And since I'm not selling my movie specifically on special effects, I need a director who can direct actors.
Yeah.
And I think that Christopher Nolan has proven that he can do that. And not all directors can really direct actors. They can direct action and things like that, but not necessarily actors. And so that's another reason for Nolan. My cast, I am casting as Neo, Tom Holland as my Neo.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And there's a very specific reason why I'm casting Tom Holland as Neo, which will come a little later. Trinity. I am casting Emma Stone in the role of Trinity.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
So we're going young here.
I'm going young on those two.
All right.
Morpheus. Kurtwood Smith is my Morpheus.
All I can think of is RoboCop.
And I will get to more of his character and why I have chosen him in this role. But
Oh, wow.
yes.
That is completely out of left field.
It is,
Holy
isn't it?
cow. Wow.
And as Agent Smith, Tom Hardy. Now you chose him as Neo.
Well, no, it makes sense if you're going younger with the Neo and a Trinity and whatnot. That Agent Smith, yeah, because like what in the original Matrix, like I guess you're supposed to realize that Agent Smith is essentially a lot like older than Keanu.
Right.
So yeah, that makes sense.
So that's my cast. Now I
could actually see that.
Yeah, that cast.
I
Yeah.
could. Just because of how soft-spoken like Tom Hardy is in that role.
I think for him to invent a good, compelling like voice for Agent Smith.
Put on the Bane mask.
No. But I think he'd be good. I think to get in that character and just be like, make it his own. I think he could really do a good job with that. Mm-hmm. The reason why I've chosen the cast that I did, I have put thought into this, and I do have some notes on the actual story of what I'm doing here. So my vision is that the story starts, and we are going to spend more time with Neo before he joins the group. But
a little bit of a backstory.
Trinity is with him in my story. She's not with Morpheus. They are together in a hacking group that I would kind of model after Anonymous in our world.
Okay.
Because in the original Matrix, I mean, Neo is a hacker. He is. I mean, but you don't see any of it. So, well, I want to just briefly, I'm not going to spend a half hour on it, but I want to spend some time with him and show that he is in one of these elite hackers. He's in a group, and it's kind of a story where maybe Trinity kind of likes him, and you kind of see Emma Stone going after Tom Holland. But in my story, Tom Holland's such a dork. He's so into like his hacking stuff that he doesn't even get it. Like,
okay,
just some light comedy there between the two, where she really likes him, but he just can't quite grasp it.
Well, and that would make it even more interesting than when he is revealed as the One and he's in the Matrix, where he's like all badass.
Yeah. There is no one in my
film.
film.
Oh, jeez.
So let's hold off on that, buddy. So they're in a hacking group together, and Morpheus in this one, he is not looking for the One. He is looking for, because to me, this is a war. It's a war between humanity and the machines that we didn't really get to see a lot of. I mean, it just felt like these guys are running around the Matrix, and more power to it. But it's like, this should be a war movie. And so Morpheus needs soldiers. So he hears of Neo and this group, and he wants to get them because part of winning this war is being able to hack into the actual machine networks, both in the real world and in the Matrix itself.
Yeah.
And so he finds them because he needs them in their group, and that's why he takes them out. And there can be kind of a scene where maybe he doesn't even want Neo. Maybe he's after Trinity because like she's like really great, but then she says, since she likes Neo so much, no, if you take me, you got to take him too.
Okay.
Kind of thing.
Kind of like the anti-hero, or like the kind of the afterthought.
Yeah. But he kind of turns out to be a big deal in the end,
Yeah, that's cool.
And so, just to throw a little bit more spice into it, make it a little bit more interesting, what we learn is that Morpheus in the real world is in a wheelchair. He's paralyzed from the waist down.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so he's in a wheelchair, waist down, and he's kind of a man of mystery. In this one, I would make his motives a little unclear, why he does some of the things he does to Neo, and to cause a little bit of some trust issues there between him and Trinity and Neo and all that kind of stuff. One of the things I would redesign for the current age is the actual Matrix chairs. I see it, instead of having this big old needle that they shove in the back of their necks, I see it being more like wireless chargers, where there's like metal points on the beds and maybe like on their elbows and stuff. They have these like sockets or whatever that they just kind of put there. Like it's like a wireless charger thing, and that's how you get into the Matrix kind of thing. Just to contemporize it with like more current technology kind of thing. It's a little thing, but it's something that I just thought, hey, maybe. I would cut out almost all of the theological like craziness. There is no oracle in my film. There is no one in my film. Any of that. We're cutting that out so that we can get to character development, so that we can get to moments between characters and all that. The other thing that they would have to struggle with is, how do you defeat a worldwide wireless hive mind? Because I would picture this group as being more of a hive-minded machine entity, that they share consciousness. So they have to figure out, how do you do this? Is there even a main hub? Like where the actual, what do you shut down? How do you do that?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the movie would be them, yeah, sure, we can hack here and we can blow up nodes and we can do all that, but how do we actually shut this thing down? And how do we do it? And if we do it, the big crux for them is, how do we do it without murdering everybody who's plugged into it?
Yeah, exactly.
They want to free everyone, but how do you do this? And I think that would be one of the major struggles that really the original movie didn't do, because they didn't have enough time to really think about that. They had to struggle. Well, do we keep people in this artificial reality forever? Or do we free everyone? And if we free everyone, okay, well now where do we put them?
Yeah.
Because the whole world's a wasteland. Do we even have food for these people?
Yeah,
Exactly. And so all of the practical things that come from that would be part of this struggle that this group has to do. You want to free everyone because you feel like it's the right thing, but there are consequences to those actions too. That's where probably I would put some of that stress and strain between Morpheus and Neo, and where maybe Neo is like saying, no, the right thing to do is to free everyone, and Morpheus is like, no, we can't do that. It's not practical. You're dooming people to die of starvation.
Yeah.
And so where is the right line in that? That's my Matrix pitch. That's why I cast the way that I cast, because I feel like Tom Holland could add some difference to this film. And I think his relationship with Emma Stone as Trinity would be a very interesting thing to see develop. over the course of that movie trilogy. And just having someone like a Kurtwood Smith in the role of Morpheus really changes the dynamic, I think. And you add some veteran talent to a young talent pool, among other things. But that's my pitch.
So how would your Tom Hardy in the Agent Smith role go?
I envision him kind of like Darth Vader is to the Emperor in Star Wars kind of thing, where he's going to be around, sure. And he's going to be haunting Trinity and Morpheus and Neo and all of that, sure. But one thing that I would definitely change is he's not going to get a piece of Neo on his programming and become like billions of... No, that's not going to happen, obviously. There is one Agent Smith, and it's up to Neo to try to stop him. But just like there's a Darth Vader in Star Wars, there is an Emperor in Star Wars that we see very little of at the beginning, but we start to see more and more of. And so I feel like kind of using that formula of having whatever this central hive mind is kind of showing itself more and more. Because if it's a hive mind, you can't really have Agent Smith go too far outside the lines here. He has to follow the hive mind, but there has to be some queen or something controlling the hive and making sure everyone's in sync. So I think going to that point and finding that individual and having it out, that's kind of my vision.
So so that's a new character.
Yes.
So king, queen, emperor?
I'd go queen, quote unquote queen. I mean, it's a machine, so it's not a female or a male.
Yeah,
technically.
But it would probably have
female
some
characteristics.
Sort of persona.
Yeah, like a female persona, probably.
To feel more like familiar to the human characters. Or whatever. Anybody in mind for that?
Ooh, yeah. See, now that's the challenge. You know,
Well, you think about it. I was going to ask too. So so how would your Matrix generally operate in a similar fashion?
Okay.
Like, is the backstory kind of similar, where they're using people for energy and?
Yes, so that part would remain the same. But there's other thing that I wanted to talk about the Matrix and the hacking abilities within the Matrix.
Okay.
I think where it's like, oh, only Neo can like fly around and do crazy stuff. Well, I'd like to kind of back it up. And again, I don't want to do this in a cheesy way because there's a really bad cheesy way to do this. Yeah. But I think of the Matrix as, what is the Matrix? Well, it's the ultimate in virtual reality, right? What do video games have? They have cheat codes, basically. So I think part of this hacking is really showing off the cheat code, quote-unquote, abilities.
No, I like that aspect of it, because it's like that was like a good thing and a bad thing about the original Matrix, is like they started towards the end bringing in the more theological thing, and it's like, okay, but you're talking about like machines.
Right.
And you're talking about like a virtual world, so how does this have anything to do with the other? And then that's where they started going wrong, I think, with Revolutions and Reloaded and Revolutions.
I'm thinking, cheat codes, kind of, but don't call it cheat codes, obviously. But I'm just saying,
Neo's got his game genie again.
ABA. Some of the hacks that we're going to see in here, yeah, sure, you're gonna see them hack in, and they can teleport around, or
they can change things within the Matrix. They can, like the Matrix can. Make cement walls. And
you can walk on water or whatever. And
the better hacker that you are, the better you are in the Matrix.
Right.
Basically. Okay. No, I like that.
And that's kind of my general concept of how that. I forgot to mention that, but that's kind of where I wanted to go with it, because I'm like, well, if I can't really.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, because it should be a fully hackable world.
Yeah.
I mean, really, if you know that's what you're in, and you know the code, and you're a good enough programmer.
Yeah, and I kind of like the aspect where like Neo and Trinity are these hackers, and they kind of like maybe they get on Morpheus's radar. I mean, that's kind of similar to the original Matrix.
Right.
Like Neo gets on Morpheus's radar because of his hacking abilities.
Right.
But that's never really explained. But like maybe. in the way that Trinity and Neo are hacking things, they stumble upon like this code in the Matrix or whatever.
Right.
It's like, wait, what was that?
That's something we've never seen before.
We're trying to, break into this bank or something or whatever, or this corporation. It's almost like, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the movie with Johnny Lee Miller and Angelina Jolie. Oh, Hackers.
Oh, well, yeah.
Trying to break into this corporation or something, and they come along this line of like code that's like nothing like they've ever seen before or something.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, what is this? And then
Yeah.
because that happens, they get on Morpheus's radar, but they also get on
And
the actual Matrix's radar.
that's where everything would come coalesce and come together.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like Neo and Trinity would be hacking, and there's code behind the code, but this
Yeah.
code behind the code is nothing.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense to
Yeah.
them. There is no rhyme or reason for
Yeah.
it, and it's like, what is this? And that brings Agent Smith down on them. And that's how he gets into it. And Morpheus and Agent Smith, we could say, have a history. It's how you can make whatever history you want between them, but they know each other, and so Morpheus kind of knows wherever Agent Smith shows up, there's probably something good for him, because Agent Smith is higher up on the pay scale. That's how he gets on to Neo, and you have that initial chase scene or whatever, or whatever, and Morpheus saves him.
Well, and I kind of like the little bit of backstory too, because like you said, it's good for character development.
Right.
Which really there wasn't a whole lot of character development in
Nope.
the Matrix, which I kind of partially liked and kind of partially didn't like. In subsequent viewings, you get more of that.
Right.
But yeah.
And so I think that's kind of where I would go with it. It'd be much more character deep. I think there'd be a little bit more levity, to my version of the film. I mean, obviously, if you're going to have more character development, they're going to be more three-dimensional. So it's not going to be just this two-dimensional kind of like, well, you're the one, and this is what you go and do. Okay, well, I know kung fu.
Yeah.
And not to rip on the Matrix, but I'm just saying, like, it worked for what it was, but my version would have to delve deeper to make up for the fact that I'm not showing off people on wires kicking each other in the face. Like, that's not what's going to sell the movie, because people have seen that.
Yeah. At this point, yeah, you're right. Like at the time that it came out, like this was new and revolutionary.
Right, but that was 20 years ago.
That was 20 years ago. Yeah.
And so now it's like, well, now what do people want?
Now
Well,
that's standard.
yeah, and now
we're making full movies of CGI.
it's funny because it almost feels like with any film, what's really going to sell a film is a good story. But that's always what it should have been. But it almost feels like that's where we're going now, because the special effects, what can you do anymore? Sell me a good story is the bottom line. And so, in order to do that, I'm going to have good characters that you actually give a crap about.
You're wanting to make a Marvel movie Matrix to a point. With better character development, levity, still good action.
Kind of.
Because I'm a fan of the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Yeah.
And I think they've done it in a way that works generally.
I think kind of, sort of. I'm kind of just taking elements of what works, like in today's audience.
Anything. Yeah.
And yeah, so the general Marvel formula of a little bit more levity, it's totally there. But then I'm borrowing from Star Wars too, in some elements. It's all over the place. And then there's things I'm keeping in place from the Matrix. Obviously, otherwise, why call it the Matrix?
Exactly.
I could call it Virtual World if I wanted to, just do whatever I wanted. But you were asking about my hive mind, and I think I know the actress. I just need to look her up. I think I would probably go with Cate Blanchett.
You know what's funny is I was gonna say the same thing for the Oracle character when I was talking about.
Oh yeah.
Thinking of somebody, yeah.
I think Cate Blanchett could do a good hive mind character, because she'd really just be providing a lot of the voice. I don't know if we'd see her in the Matrix or not, or if she'd just be outside of the Matrix as just a machine hive mind that you hear.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that actually sounds really cool.
Well, thank you.
It actually really does. Like, I like the little bit more of a backstory. I like the character development. I kind of like how you find out a little bit more about like how they would discover each other. It makes the Trinity and Neo characters like a little bit more bound to each other, rather than like, oh, the Oracle told me that I'm gonna fall in love with the one, and and that gets trashed in like the second and third movies anyway.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. So by the end of it, it's a pointless thing.
Yeah, I want to make it more organic. Really, is really what I want to do. No, they should have some sort of connection in the beginning. Morpheus, he comes along, and he's the general of the group. It kind of goes from there, and it's much more of a war story where we're talking about taking strikes and planning. We're going to infiltrate here, and this is what we're going to do. This is our next step in the war to take these things out and to free humanity. That's basically my film.
Well, and I think the more that that's the other thing about like 2 and 3 is the more they dealt with the real world the more boring it was.
Because
which is sad.
nothing happened
but
in the real world.
No.
And
It's
to
just,
me, you'd see a lot more happening in the real world because there'd be real world strikes on real world targets too.
yeah, and just a lot of the things that the humans had in the real world. It's like, well, how did you know, you have these huge machines that can, shoot these huge, like, how did you get any of that
Right.
stuff, like,
And
I
of
don't
course
know.
I'd have to explain some of that too because they would have ships and they would have these things. Well, how did they get a hold of this stuff? Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to explain at least some of it.
I think it would be a lot more rudimentary and like not as like technologically advanced and stuff like that
Right.
too. Because how did you come up? How did you get all this material?
They could be commandeering like old machine tech, but the machines are way ahead. Like, but
Yeah.
we've been able to grab like their most rudimentary like plugins for the Matrix kind of stuff, but just retrofit it so that it's good enough for us to get in.
Yeah, and I think
know?
that's even cooler because you're using like old tech from the machines as your own now.
Because it has to come from them.
It's like sending the Terminator back in time.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna get to the Terminator. Oh my gosh, John. Yeah, I guess that's kind of my pitch. I don't know.
I like it. I would go see that movie.
Really? Wow.
I really would. Like,
Hey, I got one person.
like I mean, if like I think you could sell that if it was like an original idea. If you wouldn't be completely infringing on the Matrix.
Well, right, but it's like if someone came to me and said, "Oh, you want to remake the Matrix? How would you do it?" Well, this is how I would do it.
No, that's awesome.
But you've got to make it a different film. You can't just keep it the same.
Yeah,
well, these days you can.
These days
but
you can,
I'm
but-
not going to do that. I'm not taking the lazy way out. Okay, I'm going to work for it.
Do you think when, because inevitably there will be a when, they remake the Matrix?
Here we go.
Do you literally? I think they will literally just remake the movie with today's cast.
That's a really hard thing to predict.
You know it's going to happen.
I think they're going to do a remake, but they're going to be so afraid to step on toes. They're going to reference the living hell out of the original Matrix trilogy and give winks and nods.
Lots of throwbacks, lots of fan service.
Yep, and I think that's going to be the Matrix remake. They're not just going to make it its own thing, and that's the other thing. Mine would be its own thing. Yeah. I'm not referencing the original. I don't care. In my world, this is the Matrix. We are redoing it.
Yeah.
There is no quaint references. I'm not going to hide a poster in the background that says Oracle Incorporated or something, on a billboard. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But I think that's what it would be. It's going to be chock full of reference. Do you remember the original Matrix trilogy? And I think that's going to be part of how they sell it. And then they're, going to cast terrible actors in some of the roles. Like you're going to get like, what's his name? Like Jaden Smith, like Will Smith's kid will play Neo, because Will Smith was
originally supposed to be Neo.
Was supposed to be Neo, yes, originally. So they're just going to get his kid to play Neo, and stuff like that. And it's going to be a horrible, horrible movie.
But it's going to make millions of dollars.
I can hope not.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want any movie to fail, but I'm going to tell you something. Like, if this movie looks like garbage, I will cheer for it to bomb so that the sequels don't even get made. That's my hope for terrible, terrible movies. Like, I want terrible movies to fail.
Like, do you think that the name of the Matrix it definitely doesn't carry as much weight as Star Wars. Like, they could literally make anything and attach Star Wars to it, and people are going to go see it.
Right.
Do you think that it would be the same with the Matrix?
Man.
I think it would be to a point, but not as...
I don't think there's a lot of nostalgia attached to the Matrix. Not nearly as much. Like, I think there's
definitely not nearly as much. I will agree with that.
But I don't hear a lot of people talking about the Matrix all the time anymore. I mean, it was a product of its time, but I mean, it's literally been 20 years since the original film came out. So a lot of time has passed between now and then. Probably like 15 years since Revolutions hit theaters and
yeah.
And,
I mean, so yeah, The Matrix was 99 and both Reloaded and Revolutions came out in 2003.
Yeah, more than 15 years since we've last seen The Matrix in a theater. At all in any shape, form, or capacity. I think you almost need to make it different enough so that it appeals, because you're going to have to resell it. I think you're going to have to resell it to today's market.
Yeah.
And not to toot my own horn or anything, but I think using my formula of making it more like a Marvel type friendly film would sell it a lot better to today's audience.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a marketability standpoint, I don't think Hollywood's going to do that. I think they're going to shoot themselves in the foot because with most reboots and remakes, they do. They take the lazy, easy way out, and then they wonder why it loses $100 million at the box office. But that's kind of the way of the world.
This was educational. I liked it.
I'm
looking forward to future Do It Better episodes now.
Yeah.
I think I'll put a little bit more thought into my next time. Hopefully it's something that I can that I don't quite maybe love as much, so I would definitely change it around.
There's definitely one we're doing later this year, which I will not name in any way, shape, or form, that you will have a field day with. Yeah. So I will do that. I mean, some of the stuff you said surprised me in good ways, and I was surprised pleasantly that we both picked Christopher Nolan and Tom Hardy in some capacity.
Yeah.
Kind of shows that we're very much on a similar wavelength in some ways. Although your idea for Quentin Tarantino kind of blows my mind a little bit,
I didn't say it would be good. It would just be really, really different.
No, but I'm just trying to truly envision a one-shot Tarantino Matrix movie, and I just can't quite wrap my brain around what in the world that would actually be. I'm a little frightened by it, but I almost kind of want to see it happen now, just because, why not, at this point. Anyway, all that being said, good times. We will be back here next week on Film Form. We're going to get back into looking back at other franchises and things, but until then, we will see you later.